All right, hello everyone, and thanks again for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast, streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can check out past guests and episodes online at celebrityjobber.com. I ask you to please subscribe. Would love a 5-star rating and leave a review, please. Talk to guests about what they did before they were famous and what led them to where they are today. Today is a very special double episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. Two very important and influential people in the world. One of them is a TV news anchor and journalist. The other, a politician, the former Speaker of the House. What was life like before Juju Chang entered the world of TV news? And former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, talks about his family, what interested him in politics. They talk about their former lives. They talk about their first jobs. A special double episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast with my guest today, ABC's Juju Chang and former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
Mr. Speaker, good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm terrific. I'm just down the road from you in Naples, and while it's overcast, it's still pretty nice.
Oh, have you gone to Seat to Table yet?
Of course.
Okay, that's
It's
the
an iconic place. People come from all over the country.
That's the hangout, man. I know. I'm from Fort Myers and Naples as well. I've grew up there, did radio there for many years, so very familiar with it,
Right.
sir. So I just wanted. I know we don't have too much time, but I wanted to. I was very fascinated. I was very excited to hear about the new project that you and your wife were doing. But if I could just rewind a little bit. You were, I didn't know you grew up in Pennsylvania, but at an early age, like your teen years, you became interested in politics. Can you tell me what it was that got you interested in politics?
Yeah, my dad was a career soldier, and we ended up in France when I was young, and literally watched the French paratroopers come back from Algeria to destroy the French Fourth Republic, a real coup d'etat. And they brought General de Gaulle back. He created the Fifth Republic, which still exists today. But it occurred to me that, countries can die. And so I decided at the end of my freshman year in high school that I would devote my life to 3 projects. What does America need to do to survive? How would you explain it to the American people so they would give you permission? And how would you implement it once you had permission? And that's basically all I've done since August of 1958.
That's incredible, especially at such a young age to, kind of have that in your mind. I think that you're probably, a little step ahead of a lot of other kids your age. Tell me about...
Well, it was pretty sobering.
So Dad was in the military. What did your mother do for work? Did she do anything for work? Or
She had worked in Daltric's department store, and she'd worked as a secretary, but then she ended up basically being an army wife and helping with various social functions. As my dad, we went from Harrisburg to Fort Riley, Kansas, then Orléans, France, Stuttgart, Germany, finally ended up in Fort Benning, which is how I became a Georgian.
So, Mr. Speaker, can you tell me before all of this, and I know a little bit of your former life, you were, you worked as a professor in numerous colleges, but what was your very first job? Can you tell me about the very first paycheck you...
Well, it was either planting sod for the housing project we lived in Stuttgart, or it was working as in the bowling alley, putting the pins back in the machine. They had an old World War II Luftwaffe bowling alley that had manual machines. This was before there were automatic machines. And so my job was to be down there, and the soldiers would come in, have a few beers, and see if they could hit me rather than hit the pins with their ball. But you made pretty decent money, and it was all a game.
And Mr. Speaker, what do you consider like your big break in politics? I know that you ran for the House of Representatives a few times while you were teaching college, but what do you think the big break was? Was there any event that really changed your life in politics?
Well, I mean, I think, and I wrote a book on this called March to the Majority. It took me 5 years and 3 campaigns to win a House seat. And then I said to the leadership, we'd been in the minority for 24 years, and we ought to have a project to become a majority, and they asked me to chair it. It took 16 years. And probably the big break was designing the contract with America and winning the first majority in 40 years, and then maneuvering with Clinton so that he had to sign our bills, even though he was a Democrat, and finally getting reelected in 96, which was the first time since 1928 that Republicans had held the Congress for more than one term. And that really broke the system because the Democrats had held the House for 40 years, from 1994 to today. We've held it for 22 years, and they've held it for 8. And that is a really massive shift in power in Washington.
Mr. Speaker, you and your wife are involved. I know that you have, is it a production company, and you and your wife are involved in a new project, which is a documentary series called Journey to America with Newt and Gingrich, and it's on pbs.org and on the PBS app. Can you tell me a little bit about this 90-minute documentary?
Sure. I'm delighted to. We have a company called Gingrich 360, and Calista is the president and CEO. And this is our 10th movie, and she really is the driving force on the substance side. You know, we decided that we're strongly opposed to illegal immigration, but we're strongly in favor of legal immigration. Callista's grandmother came from Poland through Ellis Island in 1907. President Trump's mother came from Scotland. You know, if you look around, you'll know you have friends who are first or second generation Americans who came from somewhere. And so we felt that reminding people of how much legal immigrants have done to help America would really be a very powerful and very useful thing to do. And we found 9 people that we thought really fit, including Henry Kissinger, Albert Einstein, Zelma Khalilzad, who was our envoy to Afghanistan, Xi Van Fleet, who was, as a young girl, was actually in Mao's Cultural Revolution, and who got up at a school board meeting in Loudoun County, Virginia, and said, "You guys are creating the same totalitarianism that Mao did." And she really just tore the place apart, wrote 2 best-selling books, you know, and all because she was there. She had seen it, and she knew how bad it could get.
Journey to America with Newt and Gingrich on pbs.org and the PBS app. Mr. Speaker, was a pleasure talking to you this morning, and I really appreciate your time.
I enjoyed it. Glad to talk to you.
I thought it was pretty fascinating. Newt said that when he was a freshman in high school, his father was a career military man. They ended up in France. He saw paratroopers come in. It was during the late 50s, during the Algerian War. And he said he came to the conclusion that countries could die. And he became so interested in that. He said he decided to make it his lifelong ambition since that very day. Newt said it took him 5 years to win a House seat. He then said to leadership, "We've been in the minority for 24 years, and we have to have a plan to become the majority." They put him in charge of the project. He designed a contract for America, and then winning the first majority in 40 years. He said that was definitely his big break, and he happened to write a book about it. First job as a pin setter at a bowling alley. He said it was either that or planting sod at the housing project he lived in Georgia. And now he has a production company where he just put out a new documentary out on PBS about immigration. So I thought it was really great talking to the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, on this very special double episode of Celebrity Jobber.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. Celebrity Jobber.
And now my next guest is a legendary television journalist, news anchor. You know her from ABC News, 2020, Nightline, Good Morning America. Juju Chang has also been covering the Hernandez brothers story, a big resurgence. 35 years later, talking about getting these guys out of jail for killing their parents. So much recent coverage on the Hernandez brothers and their possible release from prison 35 years later. So, ladies and gentlemen, Juju Chang joins me right now on Celebrity Jobber. How are you, Juju?
I'm fine, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so great to talk to you this morning.
My pleasure.
So I'm under the I can't believe this because, I've been, a fan of yours for a long time where, I've admired you from afar, I should say. I read that you were quite the athlete when you were growing up. Is that right?
Wow. You were doing your homework. That was a long, long time ago, Jeff. Yes, I was a swimmer.
Okay. And how far did you get? Did you do that in school at all or no?
I did. I mean, I didn't get anywhere near, I got, Junior Olympics was as close as I got, but in age group swimming, I was a nationally ranked breaststroker.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think I got 6th in the country when I was like 12. But as I say, that was a long, long time ago.
Hey, man, I know. I'm reminding myself of all my accomplishments when I was younger because it just pumps me up a little bit. And how long has it been, Juju, that this, in journalism is what you wanted to do? Was that always your goal when you were a young girl? Was it like you wanted to be on TV, you wanted to be on the news? What really was your dream?
Well, it's funny. I thought I was going to be an engineer. I think I was going to, ethnic types because my parents were like, "You're Asian, you should be an engineer." But I promptly flunked out of my calculus class. But I got an A+ in political science, and it was really Connie Chung that inspired me to go towards journalism, and I haven't looked back.
Wow! So you went to Stanford. It was you majored in not only communications but political science. Was there something political that you wanted to do after school?
It's funny. I covered politics. I was always a political junkie. But when I started covering politics, it was one of those, you get to see how the sausage is made. And then I really realized I'm less interested in politics and I'm more interested in policy. So I've been, circling the globe doing stories that affect policy and people. And so it's an interesting cross-section. I've had a wonderful run, but I've been doing it for so long, Jeff, that I was a young cub producer when the Menendez brothers, first murdered their parents. And it's literally spanned the length of my career, literally.
First of all, when I started watching all the Menendez stuff, basically back when I was in high school when it happened. But as it's just come back to the surface, I just am locked into TV, whether it's the movie on Netflix, whether it was another special that came out, and now I understand it's going to be on 2020. Is there a new trial coming up?
There isn't, but a couple of things are happening. I sat down with the LA District Attorney last week, and he told me something that he hadn't said publicly, which is that he does not believe that the Menendez brothers deserve to die in prison. And he's the one who holds the key to the recommendation of a resentencing. And he told me that he's going to decide whether to recommend a resentencing or not to the judge. Now, the judge doesn't have to take the recommendation, but he has a track record of 300 other offenders who've been resentenced during his tenure. And he said he's looked at the totality of circumstances. Now, in addition to that, I think the family members understand that this is a real process that's coming down to the wire. There's the first glimmer of hope, really, in decades. So the family did an unprecedented thing. 20 members of the Menendez family, both on the Kitty side and the Jose side, threw a press conference and gave an emotional plea for mercy, saying that the brothers have been punished enough and they should be out. The 92-year-old matriarch, Joan Vandermolen, she is Kitty Menendez's sister, and she said she believes that the boys, were not monsters, that they were desperate children trying to escape unspeakable abuse. And that is the position of all 20 of those family members. Now, there's one uncle that still holds firm to this never happened, the boys are lying, they're monsters, and they did it for greed. And so it's not universol, but it's literally 20 against 1 family members.
All I'm saying is if it's true, if what they say happened to them from their father, if that story is true, I completely understand why they did that. It's just, I guess there was just so many lies with those guys that made people think that they were, full of crap, for lack of a better term.
Right.
But if what happened to them is true from their father, I mean, was just very powerful, what I've seen so far. And it's kind of amazing how 35 years later, or whatever the time limit is, how this is stirring back up again.
Absolutely. And I think there's a real re-examination that's going on. I mean, TikTok is obsessed. Everybody I know who's 15 and on TikTok seems to know all the ins and outs of the story. There's 2 new pieces of evidence that have been submitted. And they're not technically new, but they're newly resurfaced. One is a letter that Eric wrote to his cousin, Andy Cano, who testified during the trial, that Lyle had come up to him and confided in him that his father was doing these things to him. And at 18, this letter from Eric says, Dad's doing it. It's worse, Andy. I can't sleep at night. I'm scared he's going to come in. And this is an 18-year-old young man, right? And that speaks to motive, because was he doing it to buy the Rolexes and the Porsches, or was he doing it because he was convinced, as they said to Barbara Walters all those years ago, that they thought it was, we have to kill him before he kills us? So yes, been a sea change.
I have one last question for you, Juju. This is my money question. It is, what was your first job?
At a Carl's Jr. fry station. That was my first. I got an honest-to-goodness check from the good people at Carl's Jr. So there you go.
That was at Carl's Jr. We don't have one here in Florida. But
what was your first job? Now you've piqued my interest.
Okay, my first job, other than like gardening or doing stuff like that around the neighborhood, was working at the Golden Apple Dinner Theater. And let me tell you something.
Wow.
I learned a lot about people just being a 16-year-old kid working at that job. I learned a lot about people, and it was a great job.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Jeff, it was a pleasure.
Juju, great talking to you. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing this. I am addicted to the Hernandez stuff, so thank you so much.
All right. Well, we've given plenty for you to watch then. Be well.
Take care. Bye-bye. Juju is a competitive swimmer. She says she was ranked 6th nationally when she was like 12 years old. I think that's pretty huge. She went to Stanford, originally wanted to become an engineer. She majored in communications and political science, which led her into TV news. Really fascinated with what she's been working on lately, which is the Menendez brothers trial. You can watch all of this stuff, whether it's the 5-part drama on Netflix or what Juju does on 2020, the documentaries, and so much of the news coverage. She says it's all because of TikTok, which I find it unbelievable. How this is all stirred up again because of social media. Juju Chang's first job, by the way, Carl's Jr. Still never had one of those burgers. I hear they're the best. And she asked me what my first job was, so I told her about the Golden Apple Dinner Theater in Sarasota, Florida, where I was a 16-year-old kid. People from all races and also the LGBTQ plus community. And I often talk about my friends George and Fred, who are like my gay parents at work and just taught me so much about life. Juju says a real inspiration for her was that of Connie Chung. So former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, legendary TV news anchor Juju Chang, a special double episode of the Celebrity Jobber podcast, streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please subscribe. Would love a 5-star rating and leave a review. Past guests and episodes are online at celebrityjobber.com. Also, you can follow youtube.com/the@celebrityjobber or on Instagram, celebrity_jobber_podcast. I don't know if Juju Chang would have been a professional swimmer, but she might have been an engineer. And Newt Gingrich, if not for politics, he wouldn't have been setting up pins at a bowling alley, but probably a college professor, one of his previous jobs that he held. You never know. If not for that one moment, we might not have heard of either Juju Chang or former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich. I hope you're as fascinated by all this stuff as I am, and that's why I love doing it each and every week. So I can't thank you enough for listening to yet another episode of the Celebrity Jobber podcast. I can't wait for next week when we do it all over again. See you then. I'm Jeff Zito.